The PlayStation was a pretty special game console. While Nintendo did a great job popularizing the hobby and Sega did a similarly great job making video games cool for the older kids, Sony made it a mainstay for everyone, regardless of demographic. Naturally, its games are a key component of this. Games like Resident Evil, Gran Turismo 2, and Tekken 3 all contributed greatly, but I'd argue that another game made a far greater contribution to the hobby. It was a game that not only made video games cool, but also showed that video games could stand toe-to-toe with the best the film industry had to offer. That game was Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid is the third game in the Metal Gear series, or the fourth depending on how you look at it. And as much as I'd love to cover those earlier games, they will have to wait. Strangely enough, I don't have any childhood stories to tell about the earlier 8-bit games, nor do I have much of a story to tell regarding this game. I saw a demo kiosk in a Walmart, attempted to play through this opening area, died, and loved every moment of it. The series was helmed by a man known as Hideo Kojima, and his work speaks for itself. While he is responsible for the original 2 Metal Gear games on the MSX computer in Japan, he's also well known for his work on the sci-fi thrillers Snatcher and Policenauts. These days, he is probably best known for creating the infamous PT Silent Hills demo, as well as Death Stranding. But I think the game responsible for his iconic status in the industry is actually Metal Gear Solid. Now, before we begin, I'd like to point out that I will be spoiling this game's story to a pretty great degree, and considering the quality of the story, I'd strongly advise playing through this game for yourself before continuing with the video. And with that said, let's dive into this PS1 gem. Starting with the graphics, I think there is an unfair narrative here. It seems to be an all too common sentiment that Metal Gear Solid is a bad looking game. Much of this seems to stem from the game's smudged out faces and extensive use of motion blur. Well, I'm here to tell you that this sentiment is wrong. In fact, these graphics are actually quite excellent in almost every regard. While the face textures are indeed a blurry mess, the overall visual package still manages to deliver highly believable performances through its camera work and voice acting, which we'll get to in just a moment. These cutscenes are choreographed extremely well, simply put. Every scene feels like something you'd expect to see in a professionally made film, with all the familiar camera pans and cuts in tow. And even when the camera moves in close on these faces, the subtle nods and hand gestures work wonders at conveying the emotion behind the words being spoken. I don't see the blurred faces as a detriment at all. Quite the opposite. I see them as an artistic style choice. They convey enough information that your brain can easily fill in the rest, while also being conservative enough to allow the PS1 to maintain a good overall level of performance. The voice acting contributes to this in a big way too. Each and every member of the voice cast gives the performance their all, and it comes off as very believable and realistic. Sure, many people criticize Snake for constantly following up with a question, but this honestly makes a lot of sense. Imagine you have never played a Metal Gear game before. You wouldn't know what a Metal Gear is or why you should care. So when Solid Snake, our protagonist, gasps, "Metal Gear," you know this is not a matter to be taken lightly. You can sense the concern in his voice and it intrigues you. And this extends to almost everything he questions. Fox die, the PAL cards, stealth camouflage. The typical player won't know what any of these things are. So when Snake follows up with a question about any of them, he's sort of mimicking what the player would be thinking at that moment, and allowing for another character to follow up with an explanation. It's just smart writing. Now, no game goes down as a classic for its visuals or audio alone, and Metal Gear Solid is no different. On the surface, the gameplay here is somewhat basic. You'll sneak from one area to the next, finding keys and items along the way. You'll also have a slew of boss fights to contend with, in typical video game fashion. But this is oversimplifying things to a great degree, because none of these elements are as straightforward as they sound. The sneaking portion, for example, is about more than just hiding behind objects to avoid detection. You'll have to be mindful of metal grates and puddles of water that will make noise if you run through them, or claymore mines that will blow you up if you aren't careful. Additionally, there may be times when you need to knock on a wall to bait a guard, or crouch under some invisible trip lasers to obtain an item. Snake is also equipped with items that allow for a variety of ways to dispatch obstacles. Chaff grenades will scramble and confuse surveillance cameras, the thermal goggles or mine detector will show the location of claymore mines, and so on. Snake also has a number of ways to deal with his foes. Stun grenades are essentially flashbangs that will knock out all enemies within the blast radius. Claymore mines can be used as traps for patrolling guards, and he can even use close quarters hand-to-hand combat or a stranglehold to dispatch unknowing guards. Naturally, Snake has a variety of weapons at his disposal as well. You have the expected pistol and machine gun, of course, but you also gain access to a sniper rifle, a remote-controlled missile launcher, and a rocket launcher. While these should generally be used as a last resort, they are all definitely needed from time to time, primarily for boss fights. And these boss fights are generally the icing on an already delicious cake. Now, I won't bother detailing each and every encounter here. Instead, I want to focus on a few noteworthy fights and what makes them so special in the first place. First up is Revolver Ocelot, the first boss fight of the game. While it is a simple fight, I wanted to bring it up here because it is the first encounter we have with a character who has gone on to become one of the most iconic figures within the Metal Gear universe. He starts off the fight with a type of bravado that only a Kojima game can muster, and by the end is emasculated in grand fashion by a mysterious cybernetic ninja. Down the road, you'll have to do battle with this ninja. He isn't a known entity within the game, at least initially. As you approach the lab, you'll enter this hallway, and it reeks of blood and death. This is the work of the cybernetic monstrosity that behanded Ocelot earlier.
It looks like they were cut by some type of blade. It's a ghost.
When you end up fighting him, he is only interested in one thing, to do battle with Solid Snake. He doesn't seem overly concerned with killing Snake though, he just wants to feel alive again. This fight ends without any real answers, but we'll circle back to this in a bit.
I felt that, Snake. Do you remember me now?
Can't be. You were killed in Zanzibar. What? Not again. What's happening?
I'm losing myself.
Later on, we encounter the most iconic boss character of the game, Psycho Mantis. As his name implies, he is a psychic with telekinesis abilities. When you first encounter him, he takes control of Meryl, another character we'll circle back to in a moment, and attempts to use her to kill Snake. Now, you have a choice to make here as the player. Do you use guns on Meryl and potentially kill her in the process? Or do you simply rely on your fist to knock her out? Either way, when she's down, Psycho Mantis begins a speech in an attempt to intimidate the player. At first, he analyzes the number of times you've saved, engaged in battle, or died, and will comment on your performance. Then he moves on to more interesting tactics, like moving your controller by activating its vibration function, or reading your mind by commenting on your time playing other Konami classics, like Castlevania.
You like Castlevania, don't you?
After the battle ensues, you'll find that you're unable to hit him. He is essentially reading your inputs as a psychic and can dodge everything you throw his way. The solution here caught all of us off guard. Unplug your controller from port 1 and plug it into port 2 instead. This disrupts his ability to read your inputs and thus allows you to defeat him. Alternatively, if you are unable to change controller ports for some reason, you can eventually destroy these mass statues, which will disrupt his focus and allow you to defeat him. This is, obviously, far less cool though.
The first person whose mind I dove into was my father's. I saw nothing but disgust and hatred for me in his heart. My mother died in childbirth, and he despised me for it.
Later on, you'll fight Vulcan Raven. This hulking mass chases you around a Pac-Man-like arena in an effort to gun you down. What makes this fight interesting is the variety of ways you can go about defeating him. You can lay claymore mines and wait for him to set them off, or you can detonate C4 when he's near, or use a guided missile to hit him. Or, if you want to keep it simple, you can use the Stinger to launch a few missiles directly at him. This fight is satisfying because it allows you to choose the best approach, the one that works for you, and that is awesome.
Just as the boss said, it is my existence which is no longer needed in this world. But my body will not remain in this place. My spirit and my flesh will become one with the ravens. In that way, I will return to Mother Earth who bore me.
Lastly, I want to briefly discuss the battle with the Liquid Snake atop Metal Gear. At this point, you've taken down the nuclear death machine, and it's time to settle the score with your brother. This fight is actually kind of annoying, but I love how it throws out all the fancy weapons and gadgets and leaves the two of you duking it out, mano a mano. The story in Metal Gear Solid is mostly stellar as well. While I don't want to break it down scene by scene, I do want to highlight several moments that I found to be especially cool. First up is the general inclusion of Meryl, a rookie soldier who isn't all that interested in the terrorist activities, but has a great interest in Snake. Before formally meeting Meryl, you'll spot her in a cell next to the DARPA chief. When that cutscene ends, you'll hear some commotion outside the door and eventually discover that she broke out, knocked out the guard, and stole his clothes, including his underwear, hilariously enough. On a side note, you'll need to contact her later, but don't have the codec frequency. You're told that the number can be found on the back of the CD case, but you won't find a CD case in your inventory. Instead, the game is telling you to look at the backside of the game case, as in the real-life game case. You'll notice that one of the screenshots shows a codec sequence. The number in that screenshot is the codec frequency you're looking for. Later, you team up with Meryl to take on Psycho Mantis, and by the end of that battle, she is questioning herself and becoming more attached to Snake as a person rather than a battle-hardened soldier. Shortly following this, she's shot several times by Sniper Wolf, and it becomes Snake's mission to save her if at all possible. This is the last you'll see of Meryl until the very end of the game, but her inclusion is great. It turns out that she is the niece of the Colonel, so she not only means a great deal to Snake, but also his commanding officer. After a brief skirmish with Sniper Wolf, Snake is captured, and Ocelot takes the charge in torturing Snake. While the torture scene itself is rather basic and uninteresting, it's the escape sequence that I found to be pretty fun. You're confined to this cell with a single guard patrolling. If you listen closely to the guard, he references a witch who stole his clothes. He's referring to Meryl.
Damn, I caught a cold. That witch, she took my clothes.
Eventually, a scientist you saved will show up with some rations. This is Otacon. He isn't capable of disarming a guard, but didn't want Snake to starve. Fortunately, these rations are exactly what we need to escape. To do this, you'll simply lay prone on the floor and use the supplied ketchup. To the unknowing guard, it looks like you're laying in a puddle of your own blood, so he rushes in to investigate. And this is your chance to run. If you simply run to your supplies, you'll get a small cutscene showing this sorry sap is still having some tummy issues. The next bit I want to discuss comes immediately following your escape. You see, Otacon gave you a handkerchief, one belonging to Sniper Wolf no less. Now, why would he do that? Maybe he thought you'd get a cold, something that can happen by the way, but who knows? Its use is actually pretty limited. If you equip it while traversing the wolf den, the pups will see you as a friend rather than a foe. This is because Sniper Wolf's scent is on the handkerchief. It's ultimately not the most useful thing in the world, but it is a nice touch.
Snake, be careful. There are claymore mines around there. Use a mine detector.
Who are you?
Just call me Deep Throat.
Deep Throat? The informant from the Watergate scandal?
Never mind about that.
You're not using burst transmission. Are you nearby?
Listen, there's a tank in front of your position waiting to ambush you.
Who are you anyway?
One of your fans.
The last bit I want to touch on is the unknown entity known only as Deep Throat. This character will contact you by codec from time to time and offer tips about whatever it is you're dealing with. His face is always obscured, so you have no idea who this is. Later in the game, it is eventually revealed that Deep Throat is, in fact, the cybernetic ninja we fought in the lab. But his identity goes deeper than this. Throughout the adventure, you may pick up on subtle cues from Naomi Hunter via codec. She's always pointing out that you're a stone-cold killer and is confused when you show an ounce of humanity or compassion. Eventually, she is exposed as a bit of a traitor, but with an agenda that doesn't exactly align with the terrorist agenda either. Instead, she's out for revenge. It turns out Snake was responsible for killing her adoptive brother, Frank Yeager, in a prior Metal Gear related event. And Naomi blames Snake for taking her brother away. But it goes deeper, as this is the same man we now know as the cybernetic ninja, aka Deep Throat.
Exoskeleton of yours. Snake, are you just going to sit by and watch him die?
Cornered fox is more dangerous than a jackal.
Now, as you'd expect, the game is not without its faults. It utilizes a control scheme that is largely camera relative, but also utilizes a character relative scheme when Snake straddles a wall. It's hard to describe this issue, but it can take some getting used to, and would have been greatly enhanced with a toggle button. Instead, we are stuck having to use the directional buttons to hug the wall, and it just feels off. Next is an issue regarding the use of the sniper rifle. When zoomed in, the movement is wildly sporadic, which is fine because the game expects you to use diazepam to calm your breathing and heart rate, smoothing out movement in the process. The problem is that you can't control the zoom of your scope, and moving your aiming reticle is insanely slow. This makes the weapon extremely unwieldy. There's a similar issue when it comes to avoiding incoming attacks. This is especially infuriating during certain fights, like the aforementioned sniping. You simply can't navigate the play space without being shot every couple of seconds, and every time you are shot, it takes a moment before you regain control. It can be mind-numbing as it leaves you feeling like you are failing by no fault of your own. Lastly is another weapon-related issue at the end of the game. In this scene, you're in the back of a Jeep with Liquid Snake hot on your tail. You need to fire the mounted gun in order to fend him off. This is mostly fine until he is driving alongside you. For whatever reason, my depth perception fails every time during this segment. I feel like I should be hitting him, but I'm not. I did eventually learn to steady the gun in his general direction, but I can't help but feel like there was a better way to handle this. When all is said and done, these negative qualities aren't that big of a deal. They are no doubt blemishes on a fantastic game, but the positive aspects are so wildly positive that they tend to outshine these annoyances more often than not. As successful as Metal Gear Solid was, it has gone down as more of a footnote at Konami. It was relegated to a download on the PS3 version of the Metal Gear Solid HD collection, and omitted altogether in the Xbox 360 version. And the recent Metal Gear Solid Legacy collection includes it, but in a very basic emulated form. So basic in fact that there is some debate as to whether or not the GOG.com version is the better way to go. At the end of the day, the only wrong way to play Metal Gear Solid is to not play it at all. I know that phrase gets thrown around a lot, but there is a reason this game has spun into such a monumental franchise. It did things that other games didn't. It has visuals, cinematography, voice acting, and gameplay that all pushed boundaries and challenged conventions. For years, I would tell people that this was my all-time favorite video game right after Super Metroid. And going into this video, I wasn't sure that'd still be the case. But after replaying the game twice, back to back, I can say that yes, it absolutely does stand tall next to Super Metroid. It's a landmark title on the PS1, and an example of something more than just a playable movie. It's a true interactive, cinematic experience, and everyone needs to play it. Thanks for watching.